I'm Boon Chong. I'm a former CIO in one of the entities in Singapore. I started off my career as a developer, doing small talk, object-oriented technology, building some payroll systems and trying to model what a real-world system is to build something to benefit the end users in terms of their pay and benefits. Subsequent to doing development work, I proceeded on to do design using object-oriented technology and doing architecture and moving on to do technical architecture before proceeding on to the adoption of enterprise architecture within the organization. I think there is a need to have a holistic view of both the business as well as technology, in the sense that a lot of business capabilities need to be enabled by the different elements of technical capability, system capability, information, and bridging to the business itself. And there's a need for managing a lot of different stakeholders in terms of their demands and the needs. So for the architecture, we started off with standardizing on different technology platforms so that we can more systematically build up competency as well as capabilities to build systems onto some standardized approach of building things, be it on the software development or on the databases at the low foundational level. Moving on to that, I think there's a need to also manage the data, and that's where a lot of focus is on optimizing as well as making sure that all the information are structured appropriately. And moving on beyond that is all the different business and the design and the processes linking to what the business require. And all this has different parts and elements, and that has to be integrated right from business to technology to information and to the ultimate solution itself. I think that's the part where, in order to be holistic, there's a need for different subject matter experts in each of these different areas to build up the competency, the standards, the guidelines, and the approach of dealing with solution, dealing with technology, dealing with how do you engage the user and get all the different requirements in a manner that can transit from the requirements to the design and to the ultimate solution. So let's take an example of the technology piece. The technology is actually quite diverse in terms of the different areas, such as in the infrastructure, where you have server, you got networks, you got security. And then in the data part, you got the different databases. And then on the app server part, you have a lot of different platforms as well. So we have, how do we do is that we have broke down all these different components and establish certain subject matter expert personnel so that they can focus on each of these areas and determine what is the best standards, products, and approaches in developing things on top of these different components. And with that, you then holistically build up to be the enterprise technical architecture that establish the standards and the approaches as well as guidelines for each of these components. I think contrary to common belief that governance as well as standardization impedes innovation and transformation, I actually find that all this governance as well as standardization supports innovation and transformation. Why I think so is that once you have a clean slate established over time towards certain established standards and approaches of doing things, when you want to move towards a new approach as well as a innovative way of doing things, because your current slate is already standardized and optimized, it makes it more effective and efficient to move from the current slate towards your new approach. So actually it supports innovation and transformation to your desired end state. I think there are two parts to capabilities. One is the business capability and the other part is the technical capability. So I think each of these has to have its specific teams that focus on each of these areas. On the technical part, there's a need for certain teams established to continue to evolve the technical landscape and the technical capabilities in support of what the business requires. So like establishing certain development platform, be it the new Agile way of developing systems. It's not that when you want to do Agile will come about. You actually need to put in place certain platforms, certain methodology, certain approaches of developing system in an Agile way. And that has to be determined and established by certain subject matter experts, and typically they come from the technical teams. And with some of these things, methodologies, approaches, standards being established, it then have to then work with the business team that comes from the business side. And these two teams, I think, needs to work hand in hand very closely in order to evolve and transform what the desired end user capabilities that is required. I think that's the portion that you need to establish all the different components with a holistic view of what you currently have, and with that then you are able to know what kind of changes that's required, and to support that the different framework, processes, and all that has to be put in place to support the end user. So in the traditional sense, I think enterprise architecture has been around for quite a while, and people are familiar of how it facilitates the transition from business to information, to technical, to solution. But I also see that in the new digital integrated digital enterprise architecture approach, it is able to provide a very holistic view of the system landscape, the technology landscape, as well as the information landscape. And this actually facilitates data management as well as security management, because it's able to give a holistic view of the security patches and system patches that needs to be done for end-of-life system, as well as system that is going to go obsolete. So it enables organization to be able to holistically have an oversight over the state of the overall landscape, as well as to make sure that the migration is being done to migrate to the desired technical standards. And also because the information is now all captured within the information architecture, it actually facilitates data management as well as data analytics. A lot of organizations try to do data science, data management, data analytics, but the element of data management is actually very important. Before you can do data analytics, you need to know what data you have. And also, a lot of times, there's a lot of benefit of doing cross-domain analysis. And by having enterprise architecture that allows you to capture data across the organization, it facilitates data analytics as well as cross-domain data analysis. I think for user requirements that is of transformation and innovation in nature, where it is not quite established yet, I think there's a need to have a judicious way of managing the governance for this type of projects as well as system. So what could be done is you create sandboxes where you allow certain free play within a sandbox context, such that user can then innovate on their business capabilities, and the technology folks can also experiment with different technology in a sandbox environment. And that by itself, the application as well as the data inside are actually contained, and it's not really production data per se. And that allows the user to innovate on what are the business as well as technology capabilities that they want for their innovation. And when they need to transit it into full-scale implementation, and that's where the more robust and rigor of all the governance as well as the standards will have to come in to make sure that the systems are robust with all the different security measures put in place before going into production. And that facilitates innovation, at the same time ensure that the systems finally deployed are robust and secure. I think for Agile, I think there are two parts to it. One is the Agile software development process itself, and the other part is architecture. I think for Agile, from a software development lifecycle perspective, from the normal traditional waterfall towards this Agile approach, iterative approach, there's always this thinking that Agile, actually there's no scope and there's no cost constraint. But actually, to me, I think that there's still a constraint in terms of cost and budget. It's just that within this budget as well as timeline, what can you iteratively develop along the way? And one of the important elements, I think, is cost estimation. Because in order to iteratively agree between the user and the development team as to what to deliver in the next sprint, you have to prioritize. And within that sprint, you have to determine what are some of these stories that you want to implement, and that will consume your resources and your time. And in order to be able to swap stories to be implemented and replace with something that is of higher priority, you need to be able to estimate how much effort and time and cost it takes to implement each of these stories, so that you can then replace and reprioritize. And that, I think, the cost estimation part, I think, is one element where a lot of teams may not be aware, and that may affect how Agile system is being developed. So for the different key components of EA, for example, the technology architecture part, the information architecture, as well as the solutioning, we have established certain subject matter expert teams to focus on each of these areas. And they will establish all the different standards, the framework, and the processes required to develop systems on top of these different components. That's on the different subject matter expert specialized teams to manage each of the elements within the EA. We also need to ensure that as part of the software development lifecycle, when the project team develops the architecture, as well as the different artifacts required from the design to the development phase, it is tied in with the respective EA component, such that we can then make sure that it's being aligned to both the technology as well as the info and the business. And with the architectural governance that have oversight on each of these area will ensure alignment on the architecture towards the enterprise level capability. I think for enterprise architecture, many large organizations which would have some elements of either framework, system, as well as process to manage the different component part of the different aspect of EA, like technology, like info, etc., etc. But I think the challenge lies in how do you integrate each of these different components into a holistic and integrated framework, process, as well as system. That's one challenge. I think the other part is how do you tie in the system implementation and link it to each of these different components. I think that's the other challenge. And I think the most difficult part is actually on culture. How do you systematize these different capabilities such that it's being ingrained into the entire organization when they develop solution for end user capabilities. And the danger is that at some point in time, we may start to lose some of these capabilities, and you might not know it immediately, and there's no immediate pain, but over time, when you lost some of these things, it can be quite catastrophic.